She spent 15 years fixing everyone else's mistakes without a word of credit. Then a tech millionaire walked into her shop, laughed at her skills in front of the whole town, and threw out a bet he thought was a joke, $500,000 that a rusted Beetle could never beat his Ferrari. What he didn't know was that she had already decided she was done being invisible. What he couldn't see was the fire behind her silence, the years of contempt she'd swallowed, and the mechanical genius he'd just handed a reason to prove him wrong. Someone tried to stop her with sabotage in the dead of night. Her boss threatened her job, and the whole town waited to watch her fail. But when those engines screamed at the starting line, only one driver understood that money doesn't outrun mastery. If this story already got under your skin, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, because what happened next shook that entire town. Renee Cole flipped the light switches at 5:30 in the morning. The fluorescent tubes buzzed and flickered before settling into their steady hum. She crossed the oil-stained concrete to the bay doors and hit the button. The metal panels groaned upward. Cold air rushed in from the parking lot. Renee pulled her jacket tighter and walked to the tool cart. She arranged wrenches by size. Each one clicked into place on the magnetic strip. The radio on the workbench played the local news in a low murmur. A car sputtered into the lot. Renee looked up and saw the faded blue Beetle. Its engine coughed twice before the driver cut the ignition. Luis Martinez climbed out. He wore a delivery uniform and carried a paper coffee cup. "Morning, Renee," he said. "Sorry about the noise." "Don't apologize," Renee said. "That's why you're here." Luis set his coffee on the bench. He rubbed the back of his neck and glanced at the Beetle. "It's gotten worse," he said. "Started making that rattling sound yesterday." Renee walked to the car. She leaned close to the engine compartment and listened. The ticking was uneven and sharp. "Valve train," she said. "Maybe a lifter." "Is it expensive?" Luis asked. "I'll know more when I get inside," Renee said. "Leave it with me today." Luis nodded. He looked relieved and worried at the same time. The bay door behind them opened. Maya Jensen walked in carrying a travel mug. She was young and moved with careful attention. "Morning," Maya said. "Morning," Renee said. "Grab the lift controls. We're starting with this one." Maya set down her mug. She walked to the control panel and waited for instructions. Renee guided Luis's Beetle onto the center lift. The tires rolled over the metal plates with a hollow sound. She waved for Maya to raise it. The hydraulics hissed. The Beetle rose slowly into the air. Oil dripped from the undercarriage and made small, dark circles on the floor. Maya stared up at the car. Renee pulled a work light closer and attached it to the frame. "See that?" Renee said. She pointed to a loose bracket near the oil pan. "Yeah," Maya said. "That's going to fall off in a week if nobody fixes it," Renee said. Maya nodded. She watched as Renee grabbed a socket wrench and climbed under the car. The radio shifted to a commercial. Renee's hands moved quickly over bolts and hoses. She checked each connection with calm focus. Luis stood near the door. He sipped his coffee and looked at his phone. "You need a ride to work?" Renee called from under the car. "My shift doesn't start for 2 hours," Luis said. "I'll walk to the diner." "Suit yourself," Renee said. She found the valve cover and felt the metal with her fingertips. The surface was rough with corrosion. She made a mental note and slid out from under the Beetle. Maya handed her a rag. Renee wiped her hands and tossed it onto the bench. "We'll pull the valve cover after I finish the brake job in Bay 2, Renee said. "Okay," Maya said. Renee walked to the other bay. A silver sedan sat on jack stands with its wheels removed. She knelt beside the rear axle and inspected the brake pads. The shop settled into its rhythm. Tools clinked against metal. The lift hissed when Maya lowered the Beetle partway to adjust the light. Renee looked at the Beetle one more time. The car hung above the stained floor in the pale morning light. She turned back to the sedan and picked up her wrench. Another long day had started. Nobody outside these walls would see the work or say her name. Frank Dillard pushed through the office door at 7:15. He carried a stack of invoices and a clipboard. "Morning, Renee," he said. "Morning, Maya." "Morning," they both said. Frank walked to the counter. He shuffled papers and squinted at the computer screen. "We've got a full schedule today," he said. 3 oil changes, 2 inspections, and that transmission job." "I saw the board," Renee said. She finished tightening the last lug nut on the sedan. Maya handed her the torque wrench without being asked. Frank glanced at the Beetle. He frowned slightly and turned back to his paperwork. "What's wrong with that one?" he asked. "Valve noise," Renee said. "Probably lifters." "Luis can't afford much," Frank said. "I know," Renee said. She lowered the sedan and pulled it out of the bay. The engine started smoothly when she turned the key. She parked it near the front and went back inside. Maya was already under the Beetle with a tray of tools. Renee joined her and pointed to the valve cover bolts. "Start at the corners and work inward," Renee said. "Even pressure." "Got it," Maya said. Frank greeted a customer at the counter. His voice was cheerful and loud. He used words that made the work sound simple. "We'll take care of that for you," Frank said. "Our team does great work." Renee heard the word "we" and kept her face neutral. She focused on the valves in front of her. Maya removed the cover carefully. Oil pooled in the channels and dripped into the catch pan. Renee studied the lifters and saw 2 that sat lower than the others. "There," she said. "Those 2 are collapsed." Maya leaned closer. Her eyes moved over the components with concentration. "How did you know just by listening?" Maya asked. Renee shrugged. She wiped oil from a rocker arm with her thumb. "You hear it enough times," she said. "The pattern gets familiar." Maya nodded slowly. She watched as Renee pressed on each lifter with a screwdriver to test the resistance. The front door opened. Earl Hawkins walked in carrying a foam cup and a folded newspaper. He was older and moved with the ease of someone who had nowhere urgent to be. "Morning, Frank," Earl said. "Morning, ladies." "Earl," Frank said. "You're early." "Diner was slow," Earl said. "Figured I'd come see what's happening." He walked over to the Beetle and looked up at the exposed engine. "Luis finally brought this thing in?" Earl asked. "Yep," Renee said. "That car's been dying for 2 years," Earl said. He grinned and took a sip of coffee. "It just needs attention," Renee said. "Attention and money," Earl said, "which Luis doesn't have." Renee didn't answer. She pulled a lifter free and held it up to the light. The plunger was scored and sticky with old oil. Luis walked back into the shop. He looked nervous and held his phone in one hand. "How bad is it?" he asked. 2 lifters, Renee said. "I can replace them today if you want." "How much?" Luis asked. Renee glanced at Frank. He was busy with the customer and didn't look over. "150 for parts and labor," she said. "I'll give you the shop rate." Luis's shoulders sagged slightly. He nodded and tried to smile. "Okay," he said. "Do it. I need this car." "I know you do," Renee said. Earl chuckled and shook his head. He patted Luis on the shoulder. "You're a good man, Luis," Earl said. "But that Beetle's going to bankrupt you." "Maybe," Luis said, "but it's what I've got." The shop door opened again. A deep engine sound rolled into the bay from outside. Everyone turned toward the noise. The rumble grew louder. Renee straightened up and wiped her hands on a rag. Frank looked toward the entrance. His expression shifted from casual to attentive. A car door slammed outside. "That sounds expensive," Earl said. Chase Whitmore stepped through the door, wearing sunglasses and a fitted black jacket. He moved with the confidence of someone used to being noticed. Behind him sat a gleaming red Ferrari. Frank hurried to the counter. He wiped his hands on his pants and smiled. "Good morning," Frank said. "Can we help you?" "I hope so," Chase said. He pulled off his sunglasses and hooked them on his collar. "I need a real mechanic to look at my car." Renee set down her wrench. She walked toward the front of the shop and stopped a few feet from Chase. "I'm a mechanic," she said. "What's the problem?" Chase glanced at her. His eyes flicked to her stained coveralls and back to Frank. "I mean someone who knows performance cars," Chase said. "I know performance cars," Renee said. Frank cleared his throat. He gestured toward Renee without quite meeting her eyes. "Renee's been working here for 15 years, Frank said. "She can take a look." Chase sighed. He pulled out his key fob and held it up. "Fine," he said. "It's pulling to the left under hard braking, and the engine sounds rough at high RPM." Renee walked outside. The Ferrari sat in the morning sun, with its paint flawless and its wheels spotless. She circled the car slowly and looked at the tires. Chase followed her. He crossed his arms and watched with an expression that mixed boredom and amusement. "Nice car," Renee said. She crouched near the front wheel. "When did you buy it?" 6 months ago, Chase said. "You drive it hard?" Renee asked. "That's what it's made for," Chase said. Renee touched the tire tread. The wear was uneven across the width. The inside edge was nearly bald, while the outside still had grip. "Your alignment's off," she said, "and these tires are done." "The alignment was fine last month," Chase said. "It's not fine now," Renee said. She stood and walked to the rear of the car. The brake rotors showed heat discoloration around the edges. "You've been riding the brakes," she said. "These are overheated." Chase laughed. It was short and dismissive. "Sweetheart," he said, "I think I know how to drive my own car." Renee straightened. Anger flashed through her chest, but she kept her voice level. "I'm not saying you don't," she said. "I'm saying the car shows signs of stress." "From what?" Chase asked. "Winning races?" "From being pushed past its cooling limits," Renee said. "The brakes are glazed and the rotors need resurfacing." Chase shook his head. He looked back toward the shop where Frank, Maya, Earl, and Luis watched from the doorway. "I didn't come here for a lecture," Chase said. "I came for service." "That's what I'm giving you," Renee said. "No," Chase said. "You're giving me your best guess based on what you learned from YouTube." Maya's eyes widened. Luis looked down at his feet. Frank shifted his weight uncomfortably. Renee's jaw tightened. She stepped back and gestured toward the Ferrari. "You want someone else to look at it?" she asked. "I want someone who knows what they're doing," Chase said. Earl coughed into his hand. Renee felt heat creep up her neck. She turned and walked back into the shop without another word. Chase stood beside his Ferrari. He glanced at Frank and shrugged as if none of it mattered. The morning light caught the paint and made it glow. Inside, Renee picked up her wrench and returned to the Beetle. Her hands moved with controlled precision. Maya watched her but said nothing. The Ferrari's engine ticked softly in the sudden quiet. Renee pulled the old lifter from the Beetle's engine. She dropped it into the tray with more force than necessary. Metal clanged against metal. Maya handed her the replacement. Renee slid it into place and reached for the torque wrench. Frank walked back into the shop. Chase followed him with his phone in one hand. He was typing a message and barely looked up. "Renee," Frank said, "can you do the inspection anyway, just to be thorough?" Renee didn't look at him. She tightened the valve cover bolt and moved to the next one. "I already told him what's wrong," she said. "I know," Frank said, "but maybe we can get him back in for the actual work." Renee set down the wrench. She climbed out from under the Beetle and wiped her hands on a rag. "Fine," she said. Chase glanced up from his phone. He smiled slightly and gestured toward the Ferrari. "Make it quick," he said. "I've got meetings." Renee walked outside. She popped the Ferrari's hood and studied the engine bay. Everything was clean and tightly packed. The air filter housing sat at an odd angle. She touched the intake and felt excessive play in the mounting bracket. Someone had removed it recently and put it back wrong. "When was the last time someone worked on this?" she asked. "Last month," Chase said. "Some tuning shop downtown." Renee frowned. She checked the coolant reservoir and found the level low. The brake fluid was darker than it should be. "You're down on coolant," she said, "and your brake fluid needs changing." "The tuning shop said everything was fine," Chase said. "They were wrong," Renee said. Chase walked closer. He looked at the engine and then at Renee. "Or you're trying to sell me work I don't need," he said. Earl and Luis stood near the shop entrance. Luis's Beetle hung above them on the lift. The contrast between the two cars was sharp and obvious. "I'm telling you what I see," Renee said. "You can ignore it if you want." "I think I will," Chase said. He pulled out his key fob and pressed a button. The hood began to close automatically. Renee stepped back. She watched the hood seal with a soft click. "Your choice," she said. Chase leaned against the Ferrari. He crossed his arms and looked at the Beetle on the lift. "That's a project car?" he asked. His tone was mocking. "That's a customer's car," Renee said. "It's a rust bucket," Chase said. He laughed and shook his head. "How does anyone drive that thing without embarrassment?" Luis's face went red. He looked at the ground and didn't respond. Renee felt anger surge again. She turned to face Chase directly. "It's a solid car," she said. "It just needs care." "Care?" Chase said. "It needs a junkyard." Earl chuckled quietly. The sound made Luis flinch. Maya watched from inside the bay with her arms crossed. "That car probably has 50,000 miles of life left," Renee said, "if it's maintained correctly." "By you?" Chase asked. He grinned wider. "The YouTube mechanic?" "By anyone who knows what they're doing," Renee said. Frank cleared his throat again. He stepped forward and tried to diffuse the tension with a smile. "We appreciate you stopping by," Frank said. "If you change your mind about the brakes—" "I won't," Chase said. He climbed into the Ferrari. The engine roared to life with a sound that echoed off the shop walls. Chase revved it twice before backing out of the lot. The noise faded. The smell of expensive exhaust lingered in the morning air. Renee turned and walked back to the Beetle. Her chest felt tight. Maya met her eyes but said nothing. Luis finally looked up. His expression was a mixture of shame and gratitude. "Thanks for trying," he said quietly. Renee nodded. She picked up her wrench and went back to work. Renee tightened the last valve cover bolt. She tested the tension with her fingers and nodded to Maya. "That should do it," Renee said. "Let's fire it up." Maya hit the lift control. The Beetle descended with a hydraulic hiss. Luis stood near the wall with his coffee cup empty and his hands in his pockets. Renee climbed into the driver's seat. The interior smelled of old vinyl and faint gasoline. She turned the key and the engine cranked. It caught on the third try. The idle was rough for a moment and then smoothed out. Renee listened carefully to the valve train. The ticking was gone. She pressed the accelerator gently. The engine responded with a clean sound. No rattles, no hesitation. Luis smiled for the first time that morning. Sounds better, he said. It is better, Renee said. She climbed out and left the engine running. Give it a few minutes to warm up. Maya wiped her hands on a shop towel. Earl walked over and peered under the hood with exaggerated interest. You're a miracle worker, Renee, Earl said. It's just lifters, Renee said. The Beetle's exhaust suddenly backfired. The sound was sharp and loud in the enclosed space. Everyone jumped. Maya grabbed the edge of the workbench. Luis spilled the last drops of his coffee. Earl cursed and laughed at the same time. The engine settled back into its idle. Black smoke drifted from the tailpipe and dissipated slowly. What the hell was that? Earl asked. Carbon buildup, Renee said. It'll clear out. The backfire echoed in Renee's ears. She turned toward the front of the shop and saw Chase's Ferrari pulling back into the lot. He climbed out and walked to the door. Did I leave my phone? Chase called. Frank pointed to the counter. A sleek phone sat beside the register. Chase walked in and grabbed it. He glanced at the Beetle and the smoke still hanging in the air. His expression shifted to amusement. Was that your customer's car? Chase asked. Yeah, Frank said. Chase laughed loudly. He walked closer to the Beetle and looked at it with open contempt. That's a tin can, he said. How does anyone drive that and feel good about themselves? Luis's shoulders tensed. His face flushed again, and he looked away. It's transportation, Renee said. Not everyone can afford a Ferrari. Clearly, Chase said. He circled the Beetle slowly. This thing probably tops out at 70 miles per hour. It does fine, Luis said quietly. Fine, Chase said. This car is an insult to engineering. Renee stepped between Chase and the Beetle, her hands curled into fists at her sides. It's a good car, she said. You just don't know how to see it. I see a disaster, Chase said. I see something that should have been scrapped 10 years ago. Earl shifted his weight. A few other customers had gathered near the waiting area. They watched the exchange with growing interest. Not everyone needs a showpiece, Renee said. And not everyone has taste, Chase said. He gestured toward Luis. No offense, man, but seriously, upgrade. I can't afford to, Luis said. His voice was barely audible. Chase shrugged. He looked at the Beetle again, and then at Renee. You think you can make that thing fast? He asked. The question sounded rhetorical. Fast enough, Renee said. Fast enough for what? Chase asked. A parking lot? Fast enough to run, Renee said. The shop went quiet. Earl set down his cup. Maya stopped moving. Frank froze behind the counter. Chase's grin widened. He looked at the people watching and then back at Renee. Are you serious? He asked. Yeah, Renee said. Her heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. You think that rust bucket could beat my Ferrari? Chase asked. I think it could try, Renee said. Chase laughed again. This time it was louder and longer. A customer near the door chuckled along with him. Okay, Chase said. He pulled out his phone and held it up. How about this? I'll bet you $500,000 that piece of junk can't beat my car in a heads-up race. The number hung in the air. Luis's eyes went wide. Maya's mouth opened slightly. Frank started to speak, but nothing came out. Chase waited. His expression said he expected Renee to back down immediately. Renee thought about every insult, every dismissal, every time someone used "we" for her work. She thought about Luis standing there ashamed of his car. Put it in writing, Renee said. Chase's smile faltered for half a second. Then it returned wider than before. You're serious, he said. Completely, Renee said. Frank hurried out from behind the counter. He raised his hands in a calming gesture. Hang on, Frank said. Let's all take a breath here. I'm calm, Renee said. She didn't take her eyes off Chase. Chase looked around the shop. Every person was staring at him. His phone was still raised as if to record. "You really think you can beat me?" Chase asked. "I think you're all talk," Renee said. Earl whistled low. Luis looked between Renee and Chase with growing panic. Maya stood frozen beside the tool cart. Chase lowered his phone. He studied Renee's face for a moment, and then nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "You want a contract? We'll get a contract." "Good," Renee said. "And when you lose," Chase said, "I want everyone to remember this moment." "Same here," Renee said. Frank stepped closer to Renee. He spoke in a low voice meant only for her. "You can't be serious about this," he said. "I am," Renee said. "You're risking everything," Frank said. "I already risk everything every day," Renee said. "At least this time it's my choice." Chase pulled up a notes app on his phone. He started typing with quick, confident movements. "We'll do it at the local drag strip," Chase said. "Quarter-mile heads up. Winner takes 500,000. Loser shuts up forever." "Fine," Renee said. Luis finally found his voice. It shook when he spoke. "Renee," he said, "you don't have to do this." "I know," Renee said. "My car isn't worth this," Luis said. "It's not about your car," Renee said. She looked at Luis directly. "It's about respect." Chase finished typing. He turned his phone screen toward the watching crowd. "Anyone want a witness?" he asked. "This is going to be hilarious." Earl walked forward. He looked at Renee with something between concern and admiration. "I'll witness," Earl said. "If you're doing this, do it right." "Thank you," Renee said. Maya stepped forward, too. Her voice was quiet but firm. "I'll witness," she said. Chase grinned. He saved the note and slipped his phone into his pocket. "We should make it official," he said. "Drag strip office, today." "I'm not running," Renee said. "We'll go now." Frank looked ill. He rubbed his face with both hands and said nothing. Luis leaned against the workbench. His Beetle still idled behind him. The sound seemed impossibly small compared to what had just happened. Chase walked toward the door. He paused and looked back at Renee. "Last chance to back out," he said. "No," Renee said. "Your funeral," Chase said. He pushed through the door and headed toward his Ferrari. Renee turned to Maya and Luis. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice stayed level. "We're going to the track," she said. "Earl, you coming?" "Wouldn't miss it," Earl said. Frank grabbed Renee's arm. She stopped and looked at him. "This is insane," Frank said. "Maybe," Renee said, "but it's happening." She pulled free and walked outside. The morning sun was brighter now. The Ferrari sat in the lot with its engine running. Chase waved from the driver's seat. Renee climbed into her truck. Maya got in beside her. Luis and Earl followed in Luis's Beetle. The small convoy pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward the drag strip on the edge of town. Behind them, Frank stood in the shop doorway. He watched them leave and shook his head slowly. The drag strip office was a small concrete building beside the track. Renee parked her truck and climbed out. The Ferrari was already there. Chase leaned against it with his arms crossed. Judge Carla Henderson stood in the doorway. She wore a track official's vest and held a clipboard. She looked between Chase and Renee with neutral eyes. "You're here for what exactly?" Carla asked. "A race," Chase said. "With a bet." "How much?" Carla asked. $500,000, Chase said. Carla's eyebrows rose. She looked at Renee. "Is that right?" Carla asked. "Yes," Renee said. "You have that money?" Carla asked. "I will when I win," Renee said. "That's not how this works," Carla said. "You both need to prove you can pay if you lose." Chase pulled out his phone. He opened a banking app and showed the screen to Carla. The balance had enough zeros to make Luis suck in a sharp breath. I'm good, Chase said. Carla looked at Renee. Renee swallowed hard and pulled out her own phone. Her balance was nowhere close. I'll need time, Renee said. How much time? Carla asked. A month, Renee said. To get financing or backing? Chase laughed. Earl stepped forward and cleared his throat. The bet's real, Earl said. I heard it. So did 6 other people at the shop. Witnesses don't matter if the money isn't there, Carla said. It will be, Renee said. I give you my word. Carla studied her for a long moment. Then she sighed and pulled a form from her clipboard. Fine, Carla said. We'll do a conditional contract. If either party can't pay, they forfeit, and the other wins by default. That works for me, Chase said. He looked at Renee with a smirk. Backing out already? No, Renee said. Carla filled in the form with quick strokes. She wrote the date and the terms in clear block letters. Race date? Carla asked. 4 weeks from today, Chase said. That enough time for you to get ready? More than enough, Renee said. Carla wrote the date. She turned the form around and set it on the hood of Chase's Ferrari. Both of you sign, she said. And witnesses, too. Chase signed first. His signature was bold and looping. He stepped back and gestured for Renee to take her turn. Renee picked up the pen. Her hand shook, but she forced it steady. She signed her name below Chase's. Earl and Maya signed as witnesses. Luis stood back and watched with his arms wrapped around himself. Done, Carla said. She took the form and made copies. You both get one. I keep the original. Race starts at 10 a.m. on the date listed. Chase took his copy and folded it into his pocket. Renee held hers carefully in both hands. See you in 4 weeks, Chase said. He climbed into the Ferrari and started the engine. The sound echoed across the empty track. He drove away fast. The tires kicked up dust that drifted slowly back to earth. Carla looked at Renee. Her expression was unreadable. You sure about this? Carla asked. No, Renee said. But I signed anyway. Good luck, Carla said. She went back into the office and closed the door. Earl patted Renee on the shoulder. Maya stood beside her without speaking. Luis finally walked over. His face was pale. I don't know what to say, Luis said. Don't say anything yet, Renee said. We've got work to do. She folded the contract and slipped it into her jacket pocket. The paper felt heavier than it should. They climbed back into their vehicles and drove toward town in silence. The drag strip sat empty behind them. The morning wind blew across the asphalt and carried the smell of rubber and oil. Frank was waiting when they returned. He stood in the middle of the shop with his arms crossed and his face tight with anger. My office, he said. Now. Renee followed him inside. He shut the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Papers fluttered on the desk. What the hell were you thinking? Frank asked. I was thinking I'm tired of being disrespected, Renee said. So you bet money you don't have on a car that barely runs? Frank asked. I'll make it run, Renee said. Frank paced the small office. He rubbed his temples and shook his head. This isn't just about you, he said. You dragged my shop into this circus. I didn't mention the shop, Renee said. Everyone knows you work here, Frank said. When you lose, it's my reputation too. If I lose, Renee said. When? Frank said. He stopped pacing and looked at her directly. You can't beat a Ferrari with that Beetle. It's impossible. Maybe, Renee said. So why did you do it? Frank asked. Renee was quiet for a moment. She thought about Chase's laugh, about Luis's shame, about every time someone said we instead of her name. Because I'm sick of pretending it doesn't matter, she said. Frank sat down in his desk chair. He looked older suddenly, tired. If you embarrass this shop, he said, I can't keep you on. I've got a business to run. I understand, Renee said. I'm serious, Renee, Frank said. Win or lose, if this gets out of hand, you're done here. Noted, Renee said. She turned and walked to the door. Frank called after her, but she didn't stop. She pushed back into the shop and let the door swing shut behind her. Maya and Luis stood near the Beetle. Earl had left. The bay felt bigger and emptier without his presence. What did he say? Maya asked. Nothing good, Renee said. Luis stepped forward, his hands twisted together nervously. I can tell Chase it was a mistake, Luis said. I can say you didn't mean it. I meant it, Renee said. But your job, Luis started. Is already at risk, Renee said. I've been at risk here for 15 years. At least now I'm fighting back. Maya looked at the Beetle. She walked around it slowly and studied the frame. Can we really make this fast enough? Maya asked. I don't know, Renee said, but we're going to try. She rolled her tool cart over to the Beetle. She opened a drawer and pulled out a notebook. She flipped to a blank page and started writing. What are you doing? Luis asked. Making a plan, Renee said. We've got 4 weeks. First thing is a full teardown. Engine, suspension, transmission, everything. That's a lot of work, Maya said. I know, Renee said. She wrote faster. Her handwriting was small and precise. The list grew longer with each passing minute. Luis watched. Her. Slowly his fear shifted into something else. Something quieter, but stronger. You're really doing this? He said. Yeah, Renee said. She looked up at the Beetle hanging on the lift. We all are. The shop was quiet except for the scratch of pen on paper. Outside, cars passed on the street. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Renee stared at the Beetle, its rust and dents and failing parts. She felt the weight of the impossible challenge pressing down on her, but underneath the fear was something else. A spark of defiance that refused to go out. She set down her pen and walked to the Beetle. She placed her hand on the cold metal and made a promise to herself. Win or lose, she would do this her way. No one would take that from her again. Renee and Maya stood over the disassembled Beetle. Parts covered every surface of the bay. The engine hung from the hoist on thick chains. Start with the head, Renee said. Check every valve seal. Maya nodded. She pulled the cylinder head closer and began inspecting each component. Her movements were careful and methodical. Luis arrived with coffee and breakfast sandwiches. He set them on the workbench and looked at the scattered parts. How long will this take? Luis asked. As long as it takes, Renee said. She crouched beside a cardboard box filled with engine internals. Her hands sorted through pistons and connecting rods. Each piece got examined and catalogued. Some of these are aftermarket, Renee said. She held up a piston. This isn't stock. Is that bad? Luis asked. No, Renee said. It's interesting. She set the piston aside and reached deeper into the box. Her fingers found something unexpected. She pulled out a turbocharger. You didn't mention this, Renee said. Luis stepped closer. He looked at the turbo with confusion. I didn't know it was there, he said. The guy who sold me the car never said anything. Renee turned the turbo over in her hands. It was small and corroded, but intact. The compressor wheel spun freely when she touched it. This changes things, Renee said. Good or bad? Maya asked. Both, Renee said. It means someone tried to make this fast once, but they gave up or didn't know what they were doing. She set the turbo on the bench. Maya came over and examined it closely. Can we use it? Maya asked. Maybe, Renee said, if we rebuild it and tune it right. Luis looked between them. His expression was a mixture of hope and worry. "Will that help us beat the Ferrari?" he asked. "It might," Renee said, "but it's not magic. We still need to fix everything else." She returned to the engine bay. The wiring harness was a mess of spliced connections and electrical tape. Someone had tried to install the turbo but hadn't finished the job properly. "Who owned this car before you?" Renee asked. "Some kid," Luis said. "He was moving out of state. Needed money fast." "He left a project halfway done," Renee said. "That's why nothing works right." Maya pulled out a notebook. She started sketching the turbo setup and making notes about what needed replacing. "How much will all this cost?" Luis asked. Renee was quiet for a moment. She looked at the pile of parts and did mental math. "More than you have," she said. "But I'll figure it out." "I can't let you pay for this," Luis said. "You're not," Renee said. "I'm betting on it, literally." Frank walked past the bay. He glanced at the mess and kept moving without comment. His silence felt heavier than words. Renee ignored him. She lifted the turbo again and studied the mounting points. A plan was forming in her mind. It was rough and incomplete, but it was something. "We're going to make this work," she said. Maya looked up from her notes. Luis nodded slowly. "Okay," Luis said. "What do we do first?" "Clean every part," Renee said. "Then we figure out what's worth keeping and what needs to go." They worked through the morning. The pile of salvageable parts grew slowly. The pile of discards grew faster. By noon, they had a clearer picture of what they were dealing with. Renee wiped her hands and stepped back. The Beetle's skeleton sat on the lift, bare and exposed and waiting. She thought about Chase's Ferrari, about the sound of its engine and the way it moved. Then she looked at the turbo sitting on the bench. The gap between the two cars felt impossibly wide. But for the first time since signing the contract, she saw a thread of possibility. Renee drove to her mother's apartment after the shop closed. The building was old but clean. She climbed the stairs to the second floor and knocked. Her mother opened the door. She was 68 and moved carefully because of arthritis in her knees. "Hi, Mama," Renee said. "Renee," her mother said. She smiled and stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment smelled of cooking oil and laundry detergent. Renee set a bag of takeout on the kitchen table. Her mother sat down slowly and opened the containers. "You didn't have to bring food," her mother said. "I wanted to," Renee said. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then her mother set down her fork and looked at Renee carefully. "I heard something at the grocery store today," her mother said. "What did you hear?" Renee asked. "That you made a bet with some rich man," her mother said. $500,000. Renee closed her eyes briefly. News traveled fast in this town. "It's true," Renee said. Her mother was quiet. She picked up her fork again and pushed rice around her plate. "Are you angry?" Renee asked. "No," her mother said. "I'm worried." "I know it sounds crazy," Renee said. "It is crazy," her mother said, "but I understand why you did it." Renee looked at her mother, the woman who had raised her alone, who had worked 2 jobs and never complained, who had taught her that dignity mattered. "I'm tired of being invisible," Renee said. "You're not invisible to me," her mother said. "I know," Renee said. "But I am everywhere else." Her mother reached across the table. She took Renee's hand in hers. Her grip was weak but steady. "You've always been the smartest person in any room," her mother said, "even when they pretended not to notice." "That doesn't pay the bills," Renee said. Her mother's eyes moved to the stack of envelopes on the counter. Medical bills, collection notices, payment plans that never seemed to shrink. "Is this about the money I owe?" her mother asked. "It's about a lot of things," Renee said. But yeah, that's part of it. Don't do this for me, her mother said. I'll manage. You shouldn't have to just manage, Renee said. You worked your whole life. You deserve better. Her mother squeezed Renee's hand. Tears welled in her eyes but didn't fall. So do you, her mother said. They finished eating. Renee helped wash the dishes and dried them with a faded towel. The routine was familiar and comforting. At the door, her mother hugged her tightly. Be careful, her mother said. Money isn't worth your life. I know, Renee said. I promise I'm being safe. She drove home through dark streets. Her apartment was small and cluttered with car parts and technical manuals. She sat at her kitchen table and opened her laptop. The mortgage payment was due in a week. Her savings account had barely enough to cover it. If she lost the bet, she would lose everything. But if she won, her mother could get the care she needed. Luis could get a reliable car. Maybe Renee could open her own shop. Do work under her own name. She closed the laptop and stared at the wall. The risk felt enormous. The reward felt necessary. She thought about the Beetle, about the turbo sitting on the workbench, about 4 weeks to turn a dream into reality. Sleep came slowly that night. When it did, she dreamed of racing and falling and engines that wouldn't start. Renee arrived at the shop before dawn. She unlocked the bay and turned on the lights. The Beetle's parts waited exactly where she had left them. She made coffee in the office pot. The bitter smell filled the cold air. She carried her cup to the workbench and spread out her notes. The turbo sat in front of her. She picked it up and turned it slowly. Her mind worked through calculations and possibilities. A turbo added power through forced induction, but it also added weight and complexity. The Beetle was light. That was an advantage. She pulled out a calculator and started working. Gear ratios. Final drive. Launch RPM. The numbers filled the margins of her notebook. The drag strip was a 1/4 mile. Top speed mattered less than acceleration. If she could get the Beetle off the line hard and fast, she might have a chance. Maya arrived at 6. She saw Renee at the bench and walked over quietly. You've been here all night? Maya asked. Just an hour, Renee said. I couldn't sleep. Maya looked at the notes. The calculations covered 3 pages in tiny handwriting. What are you figuring out? Maya asked. How to beat physics, Renee said. She pointed to a diagram she had sketched. It showed the power curve of a turbocharged engine versus a naturally aspirated one. The Ferrari makes more power overall, Renee said, but its power comes on smooth and high. The turbo gives us a spike of torque down low. So we launch harder, Maya said. Exactly, Renee said. If we gear the Beetle for maximum acceleration in first and second, we might pull ahead early. Can we hold that lead? Maya asked. For a 1/4 mile, maybe, Renee said. The Ferrari will catch us eventually, but if we're ahead at the finish line, that's all that matters. Maya studied the diagram. Her eyes moved over the numbers with growing understanding. That's really smart, Maya said. It's desperate, Renee said. But it might work. Luis arrived with breakfast. He set down pastries and more coffee. He looked at the notes and frowned. Is it possible? Luis asked. Barely, Renee said. We need to rebuild the turbo perfectly. No boost leaks, no lag, and we need to find the right gear set. Where do we get that? Luis asked. I know a guy, Renee said. He owes me a favor. She picked up her phone and scrolled through contacts. She found a name and hit call. The line rang 3 times before someone answered. Yeah? A rough voice said. Tommy, it's Renee, she said. I need close ratio gears for an old Beetle. You got anything? The voice on the other end laughed. For what? A drag car? Something that, Renee said. You're serious, Tommy said. Dead serious, Renee said. There was a pause. Renee heard the sound of tools clanging in the background. "I might have a set," Tommy said, "but they're not cheap." "How much?" Renee asked. Tommy named a price. Renee winced but didn't hesitate. "I'll take them," she said. "Can you have them here by tomorrow?" "For you? Sure," Tommy said. "But Renee, what the hell are you building?" "A long shot," Renee said. She hung up. Maya and Luis watched her with uncertain expressions. "We're committed now," Renee said. "No turning back." She picked up the turbo again. This time when she looked at it, she saw more than rust and corrosion. She saw potential. She saw a path forward through the impossible. The morning sun broke through the bay doors. Light fell across the scattered parts and the blueprint of their gamble. Luis sat on a stool near the workbench. He had been quiet all morning. Now he finally spoke. "I think we should quit," he said. Renee looked up from cleaning turbo components. Maya stopped measuring piston ring gaps. "What?" Renee asked. "This is too much," Luis said. "Too much money, too much risk, too much everything." "We already signed the contract," Renee said. "So we walk away," Luis said. "We tell Chase we changed our minds." "He won't let us," Renee said. "And even if he did, everyone would know we backed down." Luis stood up. He paced the bay with his hands in his pockets. His face was tight with stress. "I don't care what people think," he said. "Yes, you do," Renee said. "We all do." "Not enough to bet everything," Luis said. His voice rose slightly. "You could lose your job, your house, everything." "I know the stakes," Renee said. "Then why are you doing this?" Luis asked. Renee set down her tools. She wiped her hands slowly and met Luis's eyes. "Because I believe we can win," she said. "How?" Luis asked. "That Ferrari costs more than I'll make in 5 years. It's faster, it's newer, it's better." "It's overconfident," Renee said, "and it's being driven by someone who thinks money equals skill." Maya walked closer. She stood beside Renee in a show of quiet support. "I've seen the calculations," Maya said. "Renee knows what she's doing." "Calculations aren't enough," Luis said. "What if something breaks? What if the turbo fails? What if we can't even make it to the starting line?" "Then we fix it," Renee said. "That's what mechanics do." Luis shook his head. He looked at his Beetle's bare frame on the lift. "That's my car up there," he said. "My only transportation. If we destroy it trying to make it fast, I'm screwed." "We won't destroy it," Renee said. "You can't promise that," Luis said. Renee was quiet for a moment. She understood his fear. It was the same fear she felt every time she looked at the contract in her jacket pocket. "You're right," she said finally. "I can't promise we'll win. I can't promise nothing will break. But I can promise I'll give this everything I have." "Why?" Luis asked. "Why does this matter so much to you?" Renee thought about her mother's medical bills, about Frank's dismissive tone, about Chase calling her sweetheart and laughing at her skills. "Because I'm tired of being small," she said. "I'm tired of nodding and smiling and letting people treat me that the work I do doesn't matter." Her voice was steady, but the emotion underneath was raw. "This is my chance to prove something," she said. "Not just to Chase, to everyone, to myself." Luis stared at her. The fear in his eyes was still there. But something else had joined it. Understanding, maybe. Or respect. "And if we lose?" he asked quietly. "Then at least we tried," Renee said. "At least we stood up and said we're worth more than how they see us." Maya nodded. Luis looked between them. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Okay," he said. "Okay. We keep going." "You're sure?" Renee asked. "No," Luis said. "But I trust you." The words hung in the air. Renee felt something shift in her chest. The weight of responsibility grew heavier, but so did her determination. "Thank you," she said. Luis managed a weak smile. He walked back to the Beetle and placed his hand on the frame. "Let's make this thing fast," he said. Renee and Maya returned to their work. The bay filled again with the sounds of tools and movement. The doubt had been voiced and faced. Now there was only forward. Renee was replacing brake lines when Frank called her into the office. His voice was tight. She wiped her hands and followed him inside. Frank turned his computer monitor toward her. A video was playing on the screen. Chase's face filled the frame. "You need to see this," Frank said. Renee leaned closer. The video had been posted 2 hours ago. It already had thousands of views. Chase stood in front of his Ferrari. He wore sunglasses and a cocky smile. "So I'm about to do a little charity work," Chase said to the camera. "There's this mechanic, nice lady, thinks she can make a rust bucket beat my Ferrari." He laughed. The sound made Renee's stomach tighten. "I felt bad," Chase continued, "so I made her a deal. 500 grand if she wins, which she won't. But hey, maybe I'll donate the money to a real trade school after I win. Help educate some actual mechanics." The video cut to footage from the shop. Renee recognized the angle. Someone had been recording on their phone during the confrontation. Her face appeared on screen. She looked tired and angry. The lighting made her seem smaller than she was. "This is going to be educational," Chase said in voiceover. "Maybe it'll teach people not to pretend they know more than they do." The video ended with Chase revving his Ferrari. The comment section below was full of laughing emojis and mocking remarks. Frank paused the video. He looked at Renee with something between pity and anger. "This has been shared 5,000 times, Frank said. "People are calling here, asking if we're the shop with the mechanic who made the crazy bet." "What are you telling them?" Renee asked. "That we don't comment on employee business," Frank said. "But Renee, this is getting out of control." Renee stared at her own frozen face on the monitor. She looked defeated in the still image. It made her furious. "Let it get out of control," she said. "I don't care." "You should care," Frank said. "This makes you look foolish. It makes us all look foolish." "Only if we lose," Renee said. Frank shook his head. He closed the video and leaned back in his chair. "Even if you win," he said. "Is this really how you want to be known? As the woman who had to prove herself through a stunt?" "I'm already known as the woman who does the work and gets no credit," Renee said. "This isn't much different." She turned and walked out. The office door closed behind her with a soft click. Maya was waiting in the bay. She had her phone in her hand. Her expression said she had seen the video too. "Everyone's talking about it," Maya said quietly. "Let them talk," Renee said. Luis walked in from outside. He looked shaken. "People at the diner were laughing," he said. "They were showing each other the video and laughing." Renee felt heat rise in her chest. Humiliation mixed with rage, mixed with determination. "Good," she said. "Let them laugh now. We'll see who's laughing in 3 weeks." She walked to the Beetle. The turbo rebuild sat on the bench beside it, clean and ready. The new gears would arrive tomorrow. The car was taking shape. But the public pressure was building faster than the machine. Every view of that video was another person expecting her to fail. Another person she would have to prove wrong. Maya touched her arm gently. "We can still back out," Maya said. "No," Renee said. "We can't." She picked up a wrench and returned to work. Her hands moved with controlled fury. Each bolt she tightened felt giving the middle finger to Chase, and everyone laughing at her. The video played on phones across town. But in the shop, the only sound that mattered was the sound of work being done. Renee drove to the drag strip alone after dinner. The parking lot was nearly empty. Only a few cars sat near the track entrance. The Ferrari was there. Its red paint glowed under the floodlights. She parked her truck in the shadows near the fence and climbed out. A small crowd had gathered to watch Chase test his car. She recognized some faces from town. Chase stood beside the Ferrari, talking to a man with a clipboard. The man pointed toward the starting line and said something Renee couldn't hear. The Ferrari's engine started. The sound was sharp and aggressive. Chase climbed in and drove to the staging area. Renee walked along the fence until she had a clear view. She pulled out her phone and started a stopwatch app. Then she waited. The Christmas tree lights blinked down. Green flashed. The Ferrari launched. Renee watched closely. The tires spun for a full second before biting. The car fishtailed slightly, then straightened. Chase overcorrected, and the back end wagged again. The Ferrari accelerated hard once it found grip. The engine screamed toward red line before shifting. The car crossed the finish line in a blur of red metal and tire smoke. Renee checked her stopwatch. 11.2 seconds. Fast. But not perfect. Chase drove back to the starting area. He got out grinning and holding up his phone for a selfie. The crowd clapped and whistled. Renee studied everything. The way the car squatted on launch. The hesitation before the tires hooked up. The twitchy corrections Chase made. She watched 3 more runs. Each one was similar. Fast but sloppy. The car did most of the work. Chase just held on. On the 4th run, Renee focused on the sounds. The engine note changed at high RPM. A subtle misfire or maybe a fuel delivery issue. Nothing dramatic, but it was there. After the run, Chase popped the hood. Renee moved closer along the fence. She couldn't see much, but she heard him talking to someone. "Brakes are getting soft," Chase said. "I'll get them looked at tomorrow." "You should probably ease up," the other voice said. "You're cooking them." "Car's made for this," Chase said. "It'll be fine." Renee made a mental note. The brakes were already marginal. If Chase pushed them harder during the race, they might fade. Completely. She watched for another 30 minutes. Chase did 2 more runs. Both times the car's launch was messy. Both times the brake lights glowed brighter than they should. The Ferrari was fast, but it was being abused. Chase didn't know how to preserve his equipment. He thought power solved everything. Renee walked back to her truck. She sat in the driver's seat and replayed what she had seen in her mind. The traction control saving his launches, the soft brakes, the chassis flex, the driver error. The Ferrari had weaknesses, small ones, but they were there. She started her truck and drove home. The stakes felt different now. The challenge was still massive, but it wasn't impossible. She thought about the Beetle, about the turbo and the gears and the careful tune they were building, about trading top speed for brutal acceleration. The Ferrari was faster overall, but in a quarter mile, with the right setup and the right driver, maybe it could be beaten. The night air was cold through her open window. Renee felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, but beneath it was growing confidence. She knew what she was up against now, and she knew what she had to do. The new gears arrived in a heavy box. Tommy delivered them himself and stayed to watch the install. "You're really doing this?" Tommy asked. He leaned against the workbench with his arms crossed. "Yeah," Renee said. She lifted one gear and examined the teeth. The machining was precise and clean. "Against a Ferrari," Tommy said. "That's the plan," Renee said. Tommy shook his head, but he was grinning. "You're either brave or crazy," he said. "Probably both," Renee said. She and Maya installed the transmission over the next 4 hours. The close ratio gears changed the whole character of the car. First gear was shorter and more aggressive. Second gear followed close behind. Luis helped where he could. He handed tools and held parts steady. His nervousness had given way to cautious hope. "How much faster will this make it?" Luis asked. "Not faster," Renee said. "Quicker. It'll accelerate harder in the range we need." "Will it be enough?" Luis asked. "We'll find out," Renee said. By 8 p.m., the transmission was back in the car. Renee connected the shift linkage and torqued the final bolts. Maya checked fluid levels and made sure everything was sealed. "We should test it," Maya said. "Tonight," Renee said. "Find somewhere quiet." They loaded tools into Luis's truck. Renee drove the Beetle off the lift. The engine started immediately. It idled smooth and strong. Luis climbed into the passenger seat. Maya followed in her own car. They drove to an industrial area on the edge of town. The streets were empty. Warehouses sat dark on either side. A long, straight stretch of asphalt ran between two parking lots. Renee stopped the Beetle and revved the engine. The turbo spooled with a rising whistle. She felt the steering wheel vibrate in her hands. "Ready?" she asked Luis. "I guess," Luis said. He gripped the door handle. Renee dropped the clutch. The Beetle's tires barked and the car leapt forward. The acceleration pressed her back into the seat. First gear wound out fast. She shifted into second, and the pull continued. Luis yelled something, but his words were lost in the engine noise. The turbo sang its high-pitched song, and the street blurred past. Renee shifted into third. The power tapered off, but the speed kept building. She let off the throttle and coasted. The brakes brought them to a gentle stop. "Holy shit," Luis said. He was breathing hard and grinning wide. "That was insane." Renee's hands shook on the wheel, not from fear, from adrenaline and satisfaction. Maya pulled up beside them. She rolled down her window. "That looked fast," Maya said. "It felt fast," Renee said. "Let's do it again." They made 3 more runs. Each time the Beetle launched harder. Each time the turbo hit with more force. The car that had been a rattling junker 2 weeks ago now moved with purpose. On the final run, Renee pushed it further. She held first gear to red line. The engine screamed. The turbo went from whistle to howl. When she shifted to second, the rear tires broke loose briefly before catching again. They returned to the industrial area's entrance. Steam rose from the Beetle's hood. The smell of hot oil and tire smoke filled the air. Luis laughed. It was relief and joy mixed together. "I can't believe that just happened," he said. "Believe it," Renee said. She patted the dashboard. "This car has heart." Maya walked over and looked under the hood. Everything was still intact. No leaks, no problems. 2 weeks until the race, Maya said. 2 weeks to dial it in, Renee said. We're close. They drove back to the shop in convoy. The Beetle's headlights cut through the darkness. For the first time since accepting the bet, Renee felt something more than determination. She felt hope. Renee arrived at the shop at 5 a.m. She had barely slept. Her mind kept replaying the test runs and imagining the race ahead. She unlocked the bay and hit the lights. The Beetle sat where they had left it. She walked toward it, ready to start another day of preparation. Then she stopped. Something felt wrong. A chemical smell hung in the air, sharp and out of place. She looked around the bay slowly. Her eyes went to the floor beneath the Beetle. A small puddle had formed on the concrete. The liquid was clear with a faint amber tint. Fuel. Renee's heart rate jumped. She grabbed the work light and dropped to the ground. She slid under the car and shined the light along the fuel line. A clean cut ran through the rubber hose just before it connected to the fuel rail. Not a crack. Not wear. A deliberate slice. She ran her fingers over the damaged line. The edges were too smooth. Someone had used a knife or razor blade. Fear turned to anger in her chest. She crawled out from under the car and stood up fast. Her phone was out and dialing before she finished thinking. "Frank, get to the shop now," she said when he answered. "What's wrong?" Frank asked. His voice was thick with sleep. "Someone sabotaged the Beetle," Renee said. "Get here, now." She hung up and called Maya next. Then Luis. Both promised to come immediately. Renee walked the perimeter of the bay. The side door was closed but unlocked. She always locked it. Someone had been inside after hours. She checked the security camera in the corner. The red recording light was off. She climbed on a stool and examined it closely. The power cord had been unplugged. Rage built in her throat. Someone wanted them to fail. Not just fail. To fail catastrophically. If they had started the Beetle with that cut line, fuel would have sprayed everywhere. The hot engine could have ignited it. Maya arrived first. She saw Renee's face and went pale. "What happened?" Maya asked. "Look," Renee said. She pointed under the car. Maya knelt and shined her phone light on the cut line. Her hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God," Maya said. Luis pulled up outside. He ran into the bay, still wearing his uniform from his night delivery job. "What's going on?" Luis asked. Renee showed him. The color drained from his face. "Who would do this?" Luis asked. "Someone who doesn't want us to race," Renee said. Frank arrived 10 minutes later. He walked to the Beetle and saw the fuel on the floor. His expression hardened. "You're sure it was deliberate?" Frank asked. "Look at the cut," Renee said. "That's not wear, that's sabotage." Frank studied the line. He straightened up and rubbed his face with both hands. "Do you know who has access to the shop after hours?" Renee asked. "Me, you and Maya," Frank said. "That's it." "The side door was unlocked," Renee said. "I locked it last night," Frank said. "I always lock it." The four of them stood in silence. The implications settled over them heavy and cold. Someone had targeted them specifically. Someone who knew about the bet and the car and the schedule. Someone who wanted them to fail badly enough to risk their safety. Luis's hands were shaking. He looked at Renee with wide eyes. "We should quit," he said. "If someone's willing to do this—" "No," Renee said. Her voice was hard. "We're not quitting." "They could have killed us," Luis said. "But they didn't," Renee said. "They failed. Just we're not going to fail." She grabbed a fresh fuel line from the parts shelf. She slid under the Beetle and cut away the damaged section. Her hands moved with controlled fury. Maya handed her clamps and fittings without being asked. Together they replaced the line in 15 minutes. Renee started the engine and listened for leaks. Nothing. The repair was solid. Frank watched from the bay door. His face was unreadable. "I'm calling the police," he said. "Don't," Renee said. "Someone broke in and vandalized property," Frank said. "That's a crime, and an investigation will delay everything," Renee said. "We don't have time for that." "You're willing to just let this go?" Frank asked. "No," Renee said. She shut off the engine and climbed out. "I'm willing to finish what we started. Whoever did this wanted to stop us. I won't give them that satisfaction." She met Frank's eyes. After a moment, he looked away. "Your call," Frank said. "But this is on you." He walked back to his office. The door closed with a final sound. Renee, Maya, and Luis stood together in the bay. The Beetle sat between them. Fixed. Ready. But the shadow of malice now hung over everything. "What do we do?" Maya asked quietly. "We watch everything," Renee said. "We don't leave the car alone, and we finish this race." She looked at both of them. Her expression was fierce and certain. "Someone's scared of us," she said. That means we're doing something right. Renee worked through the day with heightened awareness. Every sound made her look up. Every shadow caught her attention. She replaced the fuel line twice to be certain it was perfect. Then she inspected every other system on the Beetle. Maya helped without needing instruction. Luis stayed close. He checked the side door every 30 minutes. His nervousness had returned sharper than before. Frank emerged from his office at noon. He walked to the bay and stood with his arms crossed. "I need to talk to you," he said to Renee. "I'm busy," Renee said. "Now," Frank said. Renee set down her wrench. She followed Frank to the office. He closed the door and turned to face her. "Did you do this?" Renee asked before he could speak. Frank's expression shifted to surprise, then anger. "What?" he said. "The fuel line," Renee said. "Did you cut it?" "Are you serious right now?" Frank asked. "Answer the question," Renee said. "No," Frank said. "I didn't sabotage your car. I wouldn't do that." "Someone did," Renee said. "Someone with access." Frank paced the small office. He looked agitated and defensive. "It wasn't me," he said. "Maybe it was an accident. Maybe the line was already bad." "The cut was clean," Renee said. "It wasn't an accident." "Then maybe it was someone else," Frank said. "Someone who came in when we were all gone." "How?" Renee asked. "The doors were locked." Frank didn't answer. He avoided her eyes and looked at the papers on his desk instead. "You need to drop this," he said finally. "Drop what?" Renee asked. "The investigation. The suspicion. All of it," Frank said. "Focus on the race or walk away, but stop pointing fingers at people in this shop." "I'm not pointing fingers," Renee said. "I'm asking questions." "Questions that make everyone uncomfortable," Frank said. "Questions that distract from the real problem." "Which is?" Renee asked. "That you bet everything on something impossible," Frank said. "And now you're looking for someone to blame besides yourself." The words hit harder than Renee expected. She felt anger, surge hot and bright. "I'm not blaming myself for someone else's crime," she said. "Maybe not," Frank said. "But you're responsible for putting yourself in this position." Renee stared at him. The man she had worked for 15 years. The man who had never once given her proper credit. The man who now acted like her ambition was the problem. "Are we done?" she asked coldly. "Yeah," Frank said. "We're done." Renee left the office. She returned to the bay where Maya and Luis waited with worried faces. "What did he say?" Maya asked. "Nothing useful," Renee said. Luis shifted his weight nervously. He looked at the Beetle and then at Renee. "I think we should quit," he said. His voice was quiet but firm. "We talked about this," Renee said. "That was before someone tried to hurt us," Luis said. "This isn't just about pride anymore. It's dangerous." "Everything worth doing is dangerous," Renee said. "Not everything," Luis said. "Not this much." Maya stayed quiet. She watched both of them with careful eyes. "If something happens to you because of my car," Luis said, "I'll never forgive myself." Renee softened slightly. She understood his fear. She felt it too. "Nothing's going to happen," she said. "We're going to be careful." "How can you be careful when someone's actively trying to stop us?" Luis asked. "By watching everything," Renee said. "By not trusting anyone outside this room." Luis looked at Maya. Maya nodded slowly. "We stick together," Maya said. "All three of us." Luis took a shaky breath. He ran his hands through his hair and closed his eyes. "Okay," he said. "But if anything else happens?" "If anything else happens, we'll deal with it then," Renee said. "Right now, we keep working." She returned to the Beetle. Her hands moved with mechanical precision, but her mind was racing. Someone in town wanted them to fail. someone close enough to know their schedule and access the shop. The list of suspects was small and terrifying, but she pushed the thoughts away and focused on bolts and torque specs and fuel pressure. Trust was broken. Safety was compromised. But the race was still happening in 13 days, and she would not back down. Renee made Maya help her inspect every inch of the Beetle. They started at dawn and worked methodically through each system. Brakes, steering, suspension, electrical, fuel delivery, cooling, exhaust. Nothing was taken for granted. "Check the brake lines again," Renee said. "Make sure nothing's been nicked or loosened." Maya crawled under the car with a flashlight. She ran her fingers over every connection and hose. "They're solid," Maya said. "Check them again," Renee said. Maya checked them again, then a third time. Renee needed to be certain. Luis arrived with coffee and breakfast sandwiches. He had dark circles under his eyes. Sleep wasn't coming easily for any of them. "How's it looking?" Luis asked. "Clean so far," Renee said. "We're going through everything." "How long will that take?" Luis asked. "As long as it takes," Renee said. They worked through the morning. Every bolt got torqued to spec. Every connection got tested. Every wire got traced to its source. By noon they had found nothing else wrong. The sabotage had been limited to the fuel line. Either the attacker hadn't had time for more, or they had hoped that one cut would be enough. Renee stood back and looked at the completed car. The Beetle sat lower now with upgraded suspension. The engine bay was clean and organized. Fresh paint covered the worst rust spots. It looked like a real race car. Not flashy, not expensive, but purposeful. "We need to test the launch again," Renee said. "Make sure the new fuel line holds under pressure." "Where?" Maya asked. "Same place as before," Renee said. "The industrial park." They loaded tools and safety equipment into Luis's truck. Renee drove the Beetle carefully through town. Every engine noise made her listen harder. Every vibration made her worry. But the car ran perfectly. The turbo spooled smoothly. The transmission shifted cleanly. Everything worked as designed. They reached the empty industrial street as the sun peaked overhead. The asphalt shimmered with heat. No other cars were around. Renee did a burnout to heat the tires. The Beetle's rear end danced sideways and left black marks on the pavement. Luis recorded on his phone while Maya timed with a stopwatch. "Ready?" Renee called through the open window. "Go," Maya said. Renee launched hard. The turbocharged engine screamed. First gear wound out in 2 seconds. She shifted to second, and the acceleration continued brutal and unrelenting. The world blurred. The engine note climbed. She shifted to third and finally lifted off the throttle. Maya ran over as Renee coasted back to the starting point. "How fast?" Renee asked. "I don't know exact speed," Maya said, "but you covered an 1/8 mile in under 7 seconds." Renee did the math in her head. If they could maintain that pace for the full 1/4 mile, they would run low 11s. Maybe high 10s if everything went perfect. Chase's Ferrari was running high 11s with sloppy launches. If she could get a better start and hold her line, they had a real chance. "That's competitive," Luis said. His voice held disbelief and growing hope. "It's close," Renee said. "We're close." They did 3 more test runs. Each one confirmed what Renee had calculated. The Beetle was lighter and launched harder. The Ferrari had more top-end power, but took longer to hook up. In a short race with a good driver, the Beetle could win. Renee drove back to the shop with new confidence. The fear was still there. The anger over the sabotage still burned. But underneath everything was growing certainty. She knew what the car could do now. She knew its limits and its strengths. She knew how to drive it for maximum effect. The Ferrari was faster on paper. But races weren't run on paper. They were run on asphalt with drivers making mistakes, and tires fighting for grip, and machines pushed to their breaking points. And in that chaos, skill mattered more than price tags. Maya rode beside her in silence. Finally, she spoke. "You can really win this," Maya said. "Yeah," Renee said. "I think I can." The words felt dangerous and necessary. Admitting the possibility made it real, made failure more devastating, but also made victory something she could actually see. They pulled into the shop, as Frank was locking up for the evening. He watched them park and said nothing. His expression was unreadable. Renee ignored him. She covered the Beetle with a tarp and set the alarm on a motion sensor she had bought. If anyone came near the car tonight, her phone would alert her. "What now?" Luis asked. "Now we wait," Renee said. 11 more days. Then we race." Frank called Renee into the office the next morning. His tone left no room for argument. She followed him inside and closed the door. He sat behind his desk with his hands folded. His face was tight with stress. "I've been getting calls," Frank said. "About what?" Renee asked. "About you," Frank said. "About this shop. About whether I'm liable if something happens during this race." "Nothing's going to happen," Renee said. "You don't know that," Frank said. "People are threatening to boycott this place if we keep enabling this circus." "Enabling?" Renee asked. "I'm doing this on my own time." "You're using my equipment," Frank said. "My lift, my tools, my bay space." "I've worked here for 15 years, Renee said. "I think I've earned the use of a bay." Frank stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the shop floor. "If this goes bad," he said, "if you lose, or if someone gets hurt, or if this turns into a bigger mess than it already is, I can't protect you." "I'm not asking you to protect me," Renee said. "I'm saying I won't be able to keep you on," Frank said. He turned to face her. "Do you understand? Win or lose. If this damages my business, you're done here." The words were clear and final. Renee felt something click into place in her chest. Acceptance, maybe, or liberation. "Okay," she said. Frank looked surprised. He had expected her to argue or plead. "That's it?" he said. "Just okay?" "What else is there to say?" Renee asked. "You've made your position clear. I understand the stakes." "And you're still going through with it?" Frank asked. "Yes," Renee said. Frank shook his head slowly. He looked at her with something between frustration and reluctant respect. "Why?" he asked. "Why is this so important that you'd risk everything?" Renee thought about the question. She had asked herself the same thing 100 times. The answer never changed. "Because I'm tired of being invisible," she said. "I'm tired of doing the work and watching other people take credit. I'm tired of being told I'm good for a woman or good for someone with no formal training." Her voice stayed level, but emotion ran underneath each word. "I want one chance to show what I can actually do," she said, "without anyone minimizing it or explaining it away. Just me and my skills against someone who thinks money makes him better than me." Frank was quiet. He looked at her for a long moment. "And if you lose?" he asked. "If Chase beats you in front of everyone?" "Then at least I tried," Renee said. "At least I stood up." "That's not practical," Frank said. "That's pride." "Maybe," Renee said. "But pride is all I have left." Frank returned to his desk. He sat down heavily and rubbed his temples. "I've known you for a long time," he said. "You're one of the best mechanics I've ever seen. But this isn't about being a good mechanic. This is about ego." "His ego," Renee said. "Not mine." "Both," Frank said. "And when two egos collide, people get hurt." "I can't worry about that now," Renee said. "I signed the contract. I'm committed." "Then I hope you know what you're doing," Frank said. "Because if you don't, this will follow you forever." "I'm aware," Renee said. She turned and walked to the door. Her hand touched the handle and she paused. For what it's worth, she said without looking back. I never asked you to stand up for me. I never asked you to give me credit or fight for better pay or push back when customers dismissed me. I just wanted you to see me. She opened the door and stepped out before Frank could respond. The office door closed behind her with quiet finality. Maya and Luis were waiting by the Beetle. They looked at her with concerned faces. How bad? Maya asked. I'm fired if this goes wrong, Renee said. Luis closed his eyes. Maya's expression hardened. Then we make sure it doesn't go wrong, Maya said. Renee felt gratitude surge in her chest. These two people barely knew her compared to Frank. But they believed in her more than he ever had. Thank you, Renee said. We're in this together, Maya said, all the way to the finish line. They returned to work. The Beetle needed final adjustments, tire pressure, alignment, weight distribution. Every detail mattered now. Outside the bay doors, life in town continued. People went to work and ate lunch and gossiped about the upcoming race. Some bet on the Ferrari, some bet on the Beetle. Most just wanted to see what would happen. But inside the shop, 3 people worked with singular focus, building not just a fast car but a statement, a refusal to stay small, a demand to be seen. 10 more days remained. The night before the race, Renee stayed late at the shop. Everyone else had gone home. She sat on a stool beside the Beetle and stared at it in the dim light. The car looked ready. Every system had been checked multiple times. Fresh fluids filled every reservoir. New tires waited mounted on the wheels. But doubt crept in during the quiet hours. What if the turbo failed? What if the clutch couldn't handle the abuse? What if she had missed something critical? Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. I'm proud of you, no matter what happens tomorrow. Renee smiled despite the fear in her stomach. She typed back a quick reply and set the phone down. The side door opened. Luis walked in looking exhausted and pale. He had been working doubles all week to keep money coming in. Hey, he said quietly. Hey, Renee said. Thought you went home. I did, Luis said. Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about tomorrow. He walked to the Beetle and touched its fender gently. His hand trembled slightly. I'm scared, he said. Me too, Renee said. Luis looked at her with surprise. She had been so confident for weeks. Hearing her admit fear made his own seem less shameful. What if we lose? Luis asked. Then we lose, Renee said. We'll deal with it. But your job, your house, everything you're risking, is mine to risk, Renee said. I made this choice. Nobody forced me. Luis sat on another stool. They were quiet for a moment. The shop's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I keep thinking I should have stopped you, Luis said. That day when Chase made the bet. I should have said no. Told him to forget it. Would you have? Renee asked. Luis thought about it. He remembered standing there ashamed of his car, ashamed of himself, watching Renee stand up when no one else would. No, he said finally. Probably not. Then don't second-guess it now, Renee said. Are you second-guessing it? Luis asked. Renee looked at the Beetle, at the weeks of work and hope and fear compressed into metal and rubber and explosive potential. Every day, she said. But I keep moving forward anyway. Why? Luis asked. Because stopping would hurt more than failing, Renee said. The words hung in the air between them. Luis nodded slowly. He understood even if he didn't fully agree. I won't be at the track tomorrow, Luis said suddenly. Renee turned to look at him. Her expression was unreadable. What? She said. I can't watch, Luis said. I can't stand there and see you lose everything because of my car. It's not your car anymore, Renee said. It's our car, Our fight. But it started as mine, Luis said. His voice cracked slightly. And if you lose, I'll know it's my fault. It's not your fault, Renee said firmly. Chase started this. I accepted it. Those are the only two people responsible. I should have had a better car, Luis said. I should have. You should have nothing, Renee said. She stood and walked closer to him. You did what you could with what you had. That's all anyone can do. Luis looked up at her. Tears welled in his eyes but didn't fall. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be, Renee said. Just be there tomorrow. Be there so when I win, you can see what your car helped accomplish. And if you don't win, Luis asked, then be there so I'm not alone, Renee said. Luis wiped his eyes. He stood up and looked at the Beetle one more time. Okay, he said quietly. I'll be there. Good, Renee said. Luis left through the side door. Renee heard his car start and drive away. She was alone again with the Beetle and her thoughts. She sat back down on the stool. Her hands were shaking, not from cold or fear, from the weight of everything riding on tomorrow. She thought about calling the whole thing off, messaging Chase and saying she had changed her mind, taking the humiliation and keeping her job and her house and her safe, invisible life. But even as she thought it, she knew she wouldn't do it. Couldn't do it. The path forward was terrifying, but the path backward was impossible. She had chosen to be seen, to be tested, to prove that her competence meant something. Now she had to follow through. Renee stood and covered the Beetle with its tarp one last time. She set the motion alarm and locked the shop doors. She climbed into her truck and drove home through empty streets. Tomorrow would decide everything. Tomorrow the world would watch her succeed or fail. Tomorrow she would either vindicate years of being dismissed or become a cautionary tale. She parked in her driveway and sat in the dark cab. The house lights were off. Everything was quiet. Just one good launch, she whispered to herself. That's all I need. One perfect launch. She went inside and tried to sleep. The alarm clock glowed in the darkness. 6 more hours until sunrise. 6 more hours until the race that would change everything. Race day broke clear and bright. Renee woke before her alarm and couldn't fall back asleep. She showered and dressed carefully. Jeans and a shop shirt. Nothing fancy. She wanted to look like what she was. A mechanic. A worker. Someone who earned respect through skill, not appearance. She arrived at the drag strip at 8 a.m. The gates were already open. Cars filled the parking lot. Food trucks lined the fence. People milled around with cameras and excited voices. Word had spread. This wasn't just a race anymore. It was an event. A spectacle. Renee drove to the pit area. She uncovered the Beetle and started her pre-race checks. Oil level, tire pressure, fuel. Every detail examined one final time. Maya arrived at 8:30. She carried a tool bag and wore a determined expression. Ready? Maya asked. As I'll ever be, Renee said. Earl showed up next. He brought coffee and sandwiches that Renee couldn't imagine eating. Her stomach was tight with nerves. Big crowd, Earl said. He gestured toward the grandstands. Half the town's here. Great, Renee said. She didn't mean it. The Ferrari arrived at 9. Chase drove slowly through the pit area with music blasting. People turned to watch and take photos. He parked across from the Beetle and climbed out wearing expensive sunglasses and a confident grin. His entourage followed. Friends in designer clothes and watches that cost more than Luis's yearly salary. They laughed and took selfies with the Ferrari. Chase saw Renee and walked over. His grin widened. Big day, he said. Yeah, Renee said. She didn't look at him. She kept working. You know, Chase said, I'm going to make you an offer. Last chance before we do this. I'm not interested, Renee said. You haven't heard it yet, Chase said. "I'll give you $50,000 to walk away right now. Call it a settlement. You keep your dignity. I keep my money. Everyone goes home happy." Renee finally looked up at him. His expression was smug, condescending, like he was doing her a favor. "No," she said. $50,000, Chase repeated. "That's a lot for someone like you." "Someone like me?" Renee asked. Her voice was cold. "You know what I mean," Chase said. "Working class, shop mechanic. That money could change your life." "So could winning $500,000, Renee said. Chase laughed. He shook his head slowly. "You're really going to do this," he said. "You're really going to embarrass yourself in front of everyone." "Maybe," Renee said. "Or maybe I'll embarrass you." Chase's smile faltered slightly. Renee turned back to the Beetle and checked the lug nuts one more time. "Your car's abused," she said without looking at him. "Your brake rotors are warped, your alignment's off, your traction control's doing all the work, and you drive it thinking horsepower solves everything." Chase's expression hardened. The smugness disappeared and was replaced by irritation. "My car's worth more than your house," he said. "And my skills are worth more than your bank account," Renee said. "We'll see which one matters today." She stood and faced him directly. They were the same height, but in that moment she felt taller. "Good luck," she said. The words dripped with insincerity. Chase's jaw tightened. He turned and walked back to his Ferrari without another word. His friends clustered around him, asking what happened. He waved them off and climbed into his car. Earl chuckled quietly. Maya grinned despite her nervousness. "That was cold," Earl said. "He deserved it," Renee said. She looked at the crowd gathering along the fence. Hundreds of faces, some supportive, some skeptical, all waiting to see what would happen when money and ego collided with skill and determination. Her phone buzzed. A text from Luis. "I'm here, near the starting line. Good luck." Renee felt relief wash through her. He had come. He hadn't abandoned them. Judge Carla's voice came over the loudspeaker announcing the race would begin in 30 minutes. Final inspections would start in 10. Maya helped Renee push the Beetle toward the staging area. The engine was still cold. They would warm it up just before the race. Everything was about to become real. Judge Carla stood at the starting line with a clipboard and 2 other officials. Her face was serious and professional. "Both drivers," she called. "Front and center." Renee and Chase walked forward. The crowd noise faded to a murmur. Phone cameras pointed at them from every angle. Carla held up 2 copies of the contract. She read the terms aloud in a clear voice that carried across the strip. "Heads-up drag race, quarter mile. Winner takes $500,000. Loser pays within 30 days. No disputes, no appeals. The decision is final once both cars cross the finish line." She looked at Renee and then at Chase. "Do you both understand and accept these terms?" Carla asked. "Yes," Chase said immediately. "Yes," Renee said. Her voice was steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "Both cars will be inspected," Carla said. "Any modifications or safety violations will result in disqualification. No exceptions." 2 officials walked to the Beetle. They checked the battery mounting, the fuel system, the rollover protection. Everything passed. 2 more officials inspected the Ferrari. They spent longer on it. Renee watched as they conferred in low voices. One pointed at the brake system. The other made notes. Chase walked over, looking annoyed. "What's the problem?" he asked. "Your brake pads are severely worn," one official said. "They're at minimum thickness. Technically legal, but not safe for hard use." "They're fine," Chase said. "They're marginal," the official said. "I'm noting it in the record. If anything happens, you were warned." Chase waved him off. The official shrugged and signed the inspection sheet. Carla collected the forms. She held them up for the crowd to see. "Both vehicles pass inspection," she called. "Drivers, you have 15 minutes to prepare. Then we race." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Renee walked back to the Beetle. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, from anticipation. Maya grabbed her shoulders. "You've got this," Maya said. "Just like we practiced. Hard launch, hold first gear, clean shift to second, don't lift." "I know," Renee said. "You know the car," Maya said. "You know what it can do. Trust yourself." Renee nodded. She climbed into the Beetle's driver's seat. The interior smelled of oil and racing fuel. The steering wheel was wrapped in worn leather from decades of hands. She started the engine. It caught immediately and settled into a strong idle. The turbo spooled slightly, even at rest. The whole car felt alive beneath her. Earl appeared at the window. He looked emotional. "Whatever happens," Earl said, "I want you to know I'm proud to have watched this." "Thanks, Earl," Renee said. "You're going to win," he said. "I know it." "I hope you're right," Renee said. Earl stepped back. The crowd was growing louder. Excitement built like pressure in a cylinder. Renee saw Luis pushing through the crowd. He reached the fence near the starting line and waved. She waved back. He had come. He was there to witness whatever happened next. Chase revved his Ferrari. The sound was loud and expensive and meant to intimidate. People cheered and took more photos. Renee didn't rev the Beetle. She kept it, idling quietly, conserving energy, waiting for the moment that mattered. Carla walked to the center of the track. She raised her hand. "Drivers to the line," she called. Renee put the Beetle in gear. She released the clutch slowly and rolled forward. The Ferrari moved beside her. Both cars stopped at the staging beams. The Christmas tree lights blinked on. Yellow bulbs waiting to count down. Red lights waiting to flash green. Renee's heart pounded. Her hands gripped the wheel. Her foot hovered over the clutch. Every nerve in her body focused on the lights above. This was it. Everything came down to the next 10 seconds. The crowd went silent. Hundreds of people holding their breath. Chase revved his engine. The sound echoed across the strip. Renee kept the Beetle at steady RPM, waiting, watching. The lights started their sequence. Yellow, 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 green. Renee dropped the clutch and floored the accelerator. The Beetle's rear tires bit hard into the asphalt. The turbo screamed. The car launched forward, violent and true. Beside her, the Ferrari's tires exploded into white smoke. Chase had dumped the clutch too aggressively. The traction control fought to regain grip, but precious milliseconds were lost. Renee held first gear to redline. The engine screamed. The turbo howled. Every component pushed to its limit. She shifted to second, and the brutal acceleration continued. The Ferrari finally hooked up. Chase accelerated hard, trying to make up lost ground. The gap between the cars began to close. Renee's eyes stayed locked on the strip ahead. She felt the Beetle's lightweight frame working in her favor. No luxury interior, no complex electronics, just power and purpose. The Ferrari's engine note rose higher. Chase was pushing it hard. The car pulled closer. Renee could see it in her peripheral vision. She shifted to third. The Beetle's power began to taper, but the momentum carried forward. The finish line rushed toward them. Chase pulled alongside. The two cars were door to door. The Ferrari had more power in the high range. It started to edge ahead. Then Renee heard it. A high-pitched squeal from the Ferrari's brakes. Chase was stabbing them unconsciously, trying to control the car's twitchiness. The overheated brakes were fading. The Ferrari wavered. Chase overcorrected. The car moved a foot to the right, then snapped back left. Renee held her line perfectly, smooth and straight. The Beetle crossed the finish line a car length ahead. The timing lights flashed. Numbers appeared on the board. Beetle, 11:08 seconds. Ferrari, 11:31 seconds. Silence fell over the crowd. Then eruption. Cheers and shouts and disbelief. Renee coasted to a stop. Her hands shook on the wheel. Adrenaline surged through her body so intensely she thought she might pass out. She had won. Against every expectation, against wealth and arrogance and a car that cost 10 times more. She had won. Maya ran down the strip screaming with joy. Earl followed, pumping his fist. Louise climbed the fence and dropped to the asphalt, running toward them. Renee climbed out of the Beetle on shaking legs. Maya crashed into her with a hug that nearly knocked her over. "You did it," Maya said. "You actually did it." Luis arrived breathless. He looked at Renee with tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for believing in me. In us." Earl grabbed all three of them in a group hug. The crowd surged forward, surrounding them in celebration. Chase sat in his Ferrari. He didn't move. His friends clustered around the car, talking urgently. One pulled out a phone and started recording. Judge Carla walked to the Beetle. She held up her clipboard showing the official times. Her face was neutral, but her eyes held something that might have been respect. "Verified results," she called over the noise. "Winner, Renee Cole. Time, 11.08 seconds. The crowd roared again. People Renee didn't know shook her hand and patted her back. Phones recorded from every angle. She looked at the Beetle, the little rust bucket that everyone had laughed at. Steam rose from its hood. Oil dripped from the engine. It looked tired and used and victorious. Chase finally climbed out of his Ferrari. His face was red with anger and humiliation. He stormed toward the timing tower where Carla stood. "Something's wrong," he said loudly. "The times can't be right." "The times are verified," Carla said. "I want a recount," Chase said. "Or another race. This was a fluke." "The contract says one race," Carla said. She held up the document. "No appeals. No disputes." Chase grabbed for the paper, but Carla pulled it back. Two security guards stepped forward. "I'm not paying," Chase said. She cheated somehow. "The car passed inspection," Carla said. "Everything was legal." "She must have done something," Chase said. He turned to the crowd. "Someone check that car. She had to have cheated." Earl stepped forward. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a video. "I recorded everything from the moment the cars were inspected," Earl said. "Nobody touched either vehicle except the drivers and officials." Other people in the crowd nodded. More phones came out, showing different angles of the same events. Chase's face went from red to pale. He looked around at all the cameras, all the witnesses, all the proof that he had simply been beaten. "This is bullshit," he said quietly. "No," Renee said. She walked closer to him. "This is what happens when skill beats money." Chase glared at her. For a moment she thought he might do something stupid, but he just turned and walked back to his Ferrari. His friends followed in silence. The celebration continued without them. Chase climbed into his car and drove away slowly. The Ferrari's engine no longer sounded impressive, just expensive and beaten. Carla approached Renee with the contract. "You have 30 days to collect payment," she said. "I'll act as escrow if needed." "Thank you," Renee said. "That was good driving," Carla said. "Really good." She walked away, leaving Renee standing in the center of everything she had fought for. Luis hugged her again. Maya was crying and laughing at the same time. Earl raised her hand like a boxing champion. The crowd pressed closer, wanting photos and autographs, and to be part of the story. Renee felt overwhelmed and vindicated and exhausted all at once. She had won. Not just the race, not just the money, but something bigger and harder to define. She had proven that being dismissed and underestimated didn't make someone less capable. It just made their victory sweeter when it finally came. 3 weeks after the race, Renee stood in front of a small building on the edge of town. Fresh paint covered the exterior. New windows reflected the morning sun. A sign hung over the entrance. Cole Performance and Repair. Her name, her shop, hers alone. The money from Chase had arrived exactly 30 days after the race. $500,000 transferred through Carla's escrow account. Chase hadn't spoken a word to her since. He had deleted all his social media posts about the race and mostly disappeared from public view. Renee had used part of the money to pay her mother's medical bills, part to buy this building, part to hire Maya and Luis as her first employees. Luis walked out carrying a wrench and grinning. His Beetle sat in the first bay. Not as a project anymore, as a monument, a reminder of what they had accomplished. "First customer just called," Luis said. "Someone with a Mustang wants a turbo install." "Tell them we'll look at it next week," Renee said. "We're still getting set up." Maya came outside, wiping her hands on a shop towel. She had quit Dillard's the day after the race. Frank hadn't tried to stop her. "The lift's working," Maya said, "and I organized the tool wall how you wanted." "Good," Renee said. She looked at the shop and felt something close to peace. Word had spread fast after the race. Half the videos online had millions of views. News articles called it the underdog story of the year. People reached out offering sponsorships and partnerships. Renee had turned most of them down. She didn't want to be a celebrity. She wanted to be a mechanic. A good one, with her own shop and her own name on the work she did. Earl pulled up in his truck. He climbed out carrying a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of champagne. "Brought you a housewarming gift," he said. "It's a shop, Earl," Renee said. "Not a house." "Close enough," Earl said. He handed her the flowers. "I'm proud of you, kid." "Thanks for everything," Renee said. "For witnessing, for believing, for all of it." "Wouldn't have missed it," Earl said. They went inside. The shop smelled of fresh paint and new rubber. Tool cabinets lined the walls. A professional alignment rack sat in Bay 2. Everything Renee had ever wanted but couldn't have while working for someone else. Her mother arrived at noon. She moved slowly with her cane, but her eyes were bright with pride. Renee helped her to a chair in the waiting area. "This is beautiful," her mother said. "Your father would have been so proud." "I wish he could see it," Renee said. "He can," her mother said. She patted Renee's hand. "I'm sure he can." More people arrived through the afternoon. Former customers, friends. Even Frank showed up briefly. He looked uncomfortable and didn't stay long. But he shook Renee's hand and wished her luck before leaving. As the sun set, Renee stood in the empty bay. Maya and Luis had gone home. The crowd had dispersed. The champagne was gone. Only she remained. She walked to the Beetle. It sat on display with a small plaque beneath it. The car that changed everything. She touched its fender gently. The rust spots were still there. The dents remained. But now they looked earned. Battle scars from fighting something bigger than repair work. Her phone buzzed, a notification about another video reaching 1 million views. She dismissed it without watching. The race was over. The victory secured. The validation received. Now came the work. The real work of building something that lasted. Of proving that one moment of triumph could become a foundation for something permanent. Renee turned off the lights. She locked the door and stood outside looking at her sign one more time. Cole Performance and Repair. Her name, her legacy, her proof that competence and courage could outrun contempt. She climbed into her truck and drove home through quiet streets. Tomorrow the real work would begin. But tonight she allowed herself to feel satisfied. She had stood up, she had fought back, she had won on her terms, and she would never be invisible again.